Listeners of the Randomness of Nothing podcast, this is your host, Rashad. As always, I like to bring people from great walks of life, very good professionals, and people who are willing to share their stories of success and the path they took to help other people. And sometimes they find it within themselves before they help others. Dr. David Petrovay is a living example of that. From Bend, Oregon, he's now a life career coach. He's been on 7 different continents, and he's a living testament and proof of living your best life when you just put the right foot forward. Thank you for being a guest.
Well, thank you for having me, Rashad. I look forward to this.
I think, your message resonates with people because at one point you wanted to be a pianist or an actor, right? And so everybody kind of... everybody kind of has those, Hollywood or Broadway dreams, but, for a lot of people that doesn't work itself out. But too often people, leave things on the table, so to speak. So what made you, really say, I'm going to live my best life and move forward in, this direction?
Oh, boy. It took a lot of years to come up with that decision of living my best life. Mm-hmm. I think that, just in choice of career paths, when I look back on it, even though I did it for 34 years, it was what I was supposed to do, but I don't think it was what I was meant to do. Yeah. And so I think it began there, and it really wasn't until I was in my 40s or 50s that I realized, you know what? I need to take charge of my own life.
Right.
And stop living what other people thought I should be and do.
Right. Yes.
And so I know for many people, that is an issue for them.
Yeah.
Trying to live out someone else's best life, not their own.
I think what happens is, and we talked right before the call starts, is we both have Midwestern roots. And unless you come, and I'm not dissing people who come from money or come from wealthy opportunities. That's a good thing because people should have generational wealth set up for their children. But if you come from typical working class roots, right, sometimes you only know what you see. And the only thing you know is okay, after high school, after post-secondary education, I have to do this particular function to get by, survive, and have the 2.5 nuclear family, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very hard to look past that. And so it's really easy to fall into the habit and the pattern that you know around you. And then that leads to other things, depression, lost opportunities. And then also your inner circle may not be the people that you can reach out to reach that next level, right? Because you don't have that luxury of being able to tap somebody on the shoulder. How did you get to this point? So even in your more mid 40s or 50s, that was amazing that you did that.
Well, I think that, one of the things that I heard, I don't know if it's actually true, but it's a belief that people have, Rashad, is that if you want to take a look at what your life is like today, look at the 5 closest people to you.
Okay. I've heard about that.
Okay.
I've heard that.
Yeah, because you want to see where they are educationally, financially, just all of those different aspects of their lives. Yeah. And when I was starting out, you're right. The people that I had to surround myself with, given the circumstances, were a reflection of what I could expect looking at those 5 people. Right. Now, luckily, I did go to a private school for high school. Mm-hmm. It was a parochial school. Mm-hmm. And that's where I started to be exposed to students who were heading off to college. Because in my family, that was not what we did.
Right.
But growing up in Pittsburgh, what you did was you headed to the steel mill.
Right.
And think about what that future would have been like for me. I could have done that work,
right.
But, would I have been happy in it? I doubt it.
Yeah.
And so having that first exposure to others who had the same career trajectory was the start of that.
Right.
And then actually heading off to a university. Again, there were not too many people in my family who did that. And unlike a number of the other ones, I continued in my education, earning 2 master's degrees. One wasn't enough. And then going on for a PhD. So that really put me outside of the normal set of experiences for my background. Because I looked at it, at Rashad, and I thought, well, we were middle class. Well, when I studied the structure of the class system in this country, I wasn't middle class.
Yeah.
I was upper lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was a postal employee. He delivered mail. Mm-hmm. My mother was what they referred to as a housewife at the time.
Yeah.
They both had high school educations. My dad worked one job his whole life, and that was their reference point.
Yeah. And so, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but and here's the thing, that's not a bad thing, right? Like, so having that background shaped your mindset of, man, this may not really be for me, right? So, and it's tough because it gets to the point, and I hope this message resonates with people and we don't offend anybody, but there's something that eventually clicks where you can kind of start seeing the choo-choo train coming down the track, so to speak, and you're like, I kind of know where this is going to lead to, and I don't know if this is for me.
Right. That's a train that I don't want to get on.
Yes.
So I'll let that one pass by and wait for the next one.
Yes.
And I think that's what happened for me was in waiting for that next train, it was one that eventually fit me much better.
Right. Right.
And so when it came time to choose that career trajectory, it wasn't unusual for people who didn't have a college background or come from wealth to go into familiar jobs, like being a teacher.
Right.
I knew what it was like to be a teacher because I observed them for how many years before I went into that line of work. And I thought, well, I can do that. And I did it.
Right.
And I did it for 34 years.
Beautiful.
Now, what was different for me, though, was I went into special education. So I worked with the blind for 34 years. Wow. And how did I get into that? When it was time to graduate, back then it was 1970. The choices for men were you either went into the military because they had just had the lottery with the draft, and I was a low number. So I knew where I was headed. Yeah. If I didn't do that, then there might have been other jobs that I could enter that would have, I don't know, not necessarily given me a deferment, but would have been about life service, I suppose. Yeah. So I remember getting that letter from the Department of Special Ed at the university saying, hey, we're looking for teachers. There was a teacher shortage back then. Yeah. So I went in and I interviewed with the head of every section of that department.
Wonderful.
When I finally got to the last one, it was working with the blind and visually impaired. And I said, I could do that. Not that I had a great passion for it, but it was, I could do that. Yeah. And I wonder how many of your listeners go into work with, I could do that. Mm-hmm. It may not be my true life's calling, but I could do it. Yeah. And so I pursued that. And I did it on various levels. I started out as a teacher in the classroom. And then I went on and I did a career development specialist.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Which is very similar to what I do now.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And then the other one was they had an opening for what they called a lead teacher, which was like a vice principal. Mm-hmm. So I interviewed and was accepted into that position and did that for a number of years. That was administration. Mm-hmm. And when I look back on that and you say, oh, is there a decision I wish I had made differently? It would have been, I would not have gone into administration.
Right. Right. Not for you.
No, I mean, that was not for me. It was too much about herding cats for me.
Yeah. Getting people together, right. Molding the multiple personalities and getting people on board who didn't want to be on board. 80% of it is just motivating grown people to actually come on.
Right. And I said I loved working with the students. Yeah. It was the adults that were giving me headaches.
Isn't that crazy?
And that was the main reason why I left it after 34 years. I said, I don't want to have to deal with one more underachieving teacher who has no desire to better themselves. Right. And so that was the point at which I asked myself, didn't say it, what do I do next? And that's the randomness of nothing. It's like, okay, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And there I was, let me see, I would have been in my early 50s.
Yeah.
So I wasn't ready to stop working. Right. I was just ready to stop working in that field. Yeah. And so then what I decided was I'm going to do something that I love.
Absolutely.
Which is the work I do now.
Right. And we're going to dive into that work, obviously. And for people who are listening, and this is not a slight, this is a big props to you. He decided at an age in 50 that he was going to pivot, which means that you don't have to be, I'm 43. And for anybody who's listening, that's not the beginning. That's a nice little crossroads in life to really evaluate whatever you want to evaluate. And I think that your athletic career is gone. If you're sitting back and saying, you're suddenly going to play in MLB, I hate to break it to you. That's not going to happen. Said all that.
Right.
If you're honest with yourself and you start reaching out to the right people and you start having those real like bullet points of I need to do this, you can pivot. And it takes a different mindset in talking to coaches like yourself. So when you decided to create your company, and you're like, because you already had the seeds that were already there from your profession in teaching, and the coaching, when did you say I'm all in on this?
Oh, well, let's see. After I completed my years in the schools, with the what next was, and where is that going to happen? Mm-hmm. So what I did was conduct what we call informational interviews. I reached out to people who were doing the kind of work that I thought I might be interested in doing, Rashad. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I asked them, how did you get into this? What advice would you have for someone who's considering making a career change or, in terms of occupation? And I did 5 of those. And it's always the last question. And for your viewers, if ever you're going to do an informational interview, always end with the same question, which is, who do you know who I might speak to get more information about this? You're now building a network, okay? And so because they were all doing the same type of work, it wasn't difficult for them to refer me to someone else. Right. And I said, would you be willing to make a virtual introduction to that person for me? Yes. And they did. And the 5th person I talked to said after that conversation, we'd love to have someone like you working for us. Unfortunately, we're not hiring right now. Mm-hmm. But remember, I still asked that question, do you know of anyone else? So 2 weeks later, I receive a phone call from her saying, we have a job opening. Would you want to apply for it? And I did. And it was working with adults with disabilities. So there was that transition, okay, from what I had been doing similarly to moving into the next spot. Not random in nature, obviously. Right. I lasted for about 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Because what I learned was that company was not necessarily interested in innovation, creative ideas. It was like, no, we hired you to do this, so just do what we tell you. Yeah. And so after about 4 months, I had to have knee surgery, and I thought, oh, this is the perfect excuse. So when I was finished with it, I said, standing would be really difficult for me. So I'm just going to resign. Yeah. They were not happy, but
it's life.
Then it was the next opportunity. So I went and I joined a group of job seekers in the area. And as a result of that, I had the opportunity to do some volunteer work where I was able to start practicing my career counseling skills on a volunteer basis. And I thought, I like this and I'm good at this. Yeah. And so what came next was a job offer. They said, we'd like for you to consider applying for a regular position here, which I did. Mm-hmm. And so I worked for them for 1.5 years, during which time I was completing my doctorate.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And the other problem I ran into, and it was like, why did you decide to go into your own business? It's somewhat of a long story that explains it. When I finished, I was saying to them, the clients that I'm speaking to are telling me about a common problem that they have to address in their job search. And here's some ideas I have for how we could do that. Again, what I get is, that's not why we hired you. So I thought, they're only going to let me go so far in this. And what I learned was, for me, and I think this is something that all of your listeners should consider, okay, what's important to me? Part of it was creative expression. Right. Now, I had that in the classroom, okay? Right. I was good at that. Yeah. But here, they didn't want creative expression. They simply wanted you to do the job that they hired you to do. Now, wouldn't be surprised if those ideas I shared with them weren't given to someone else in the organization for them to enjoy. So at that point, I said, you know what? I now have a PhD. What's next?
Right.
And that's where I decided I need to go into business for myself.
Yeah. It was the next stage of
then
evolution.
I'm not accountable to
it. It was the next stage of evolution, because really the reality about it is that you were running into walls. And so what you were running into was, and this isn't a diss to anything, because there's structures and there's certain confines and things that operate in, right? So at some point it's like, this is the rules, these are the guidelines, this is what we've proven to be successful inside of our organization. And, that's not for everybody, right? And it's like, it's almost like, hey, if you are going on a date and you like certain things, you can't make that person like the certain things you like. There has to be a mutual interest in the things that you both like. And at some point, you made that decision to say, well, I'm going to pursue these things to get the full breadth and depth of what I'm pursuing, because there's a limit to what people are willing to listen to what I have to say.
Right. And I think what's important that a lot of people don't consider in choosing where they work, not necessarily what they do, but where they do it, is what does that culture look like? I think if you have a series of questions that you've prepared in advance in terms of what works for you, it will help you in making that decision about whether that would be a good fit for you. And again, sometimes you have to learn the hard way, which is that randomness of nothing.
Right.
And it's like, well, when you start out, you really have nothing.
Yeah, and it's funny because I created this show because like I'm of the ilk that if you ask me to fix a car or make dinner, it's like good luck, right? Like, and that's not up my alley. But I'm the guy that's always curious about things. Like I watch documentaries. I've told this to numerous people. People who knew me growing up will say this. I know random facts. I know, I watch documentaries. I might have said that already, but I just always research things to see how they operate and function. So I never had like one particular thing that I stuck myself on when it came to my interest. I could watch a full documentary on just how cakes are made. And I'm not exactly the biggest pastry person in the world, but I love the cake making process, right? All the way from ancient times to the most recent elegant situation. But it's about process and curiosity. And I think people are starved for information like that when it comes to, people like yourself. And I say that respectfully because there's this mentality that as long as you played by the rules, things would work themselves out.
Well, they will for someone else.
Right.
And you brought up a good point, which is you love to watch documentaries. I'm similar in that I'm fascinated by things like architecture, how they put up skyscrapers, like the ones that they're building, like the Burj Khalifa. I mean, I could watch that for hours. Now, does that mean I want to go into construction? No, it's just the creativity and the innovations that man has come up with in order for a 140-story building to go up. And there's that. And then it's like, how do people do cakes? Like you said, how do they serve 5,000 people on a ship? Okay. So, like you, it's a fascination I have with processes, like with architecture. I love to watch multi-story buildings go up, like the Burj Khalifa. And how do they do that? And then it could be something as simple as how do they prepare 5,000 meals on a cruise ship? And again, it's how they do that is what it's all about.
Right.
So does that mean that it doesn't mean that I'd be excited about doing it myself. Right. It's just that process. And I'm glad someone can do it. It's not me. Like you say, fixing a car or making a meal, that's just not me. But it's what I take from that, which is what's the fascination here?
Yes.
And if it's how do they do that, then it gets transferred to, well, how do people make the decisions about the work they do? What's that process like for them?
Right.
And my job is to guide them through that process.
Right. And the wonderful part about that is I'm sure, when people finally open up to themselves, right? So they have this certain button demeanor that they have to have, in their professional life. And then they start to talk to you, and then the quote unquote real Tim comes out, right? And then he tells you how passionate, or she tells you how passionate they are about certain things. And they got their MBA and they have all these accolades and these wonderful degrees, and they're unhappy, right? And they're sitting, because they felt like if only I would have pursued what I loved, or if only I would have actually done something that didn't involve me, that I truly pursued my passion. And I think that's hard because people equate that with, I'm going to be a starving artist, so to speak, if I pursue my passion. Right. How do they make a living off of that?
Well, and what I say to them is, all right, you can look at it from that point of view. And then I would say to them, so who do you know who is a multimillionaire doing household tasks? Martha Stewart. Okay.
Right.
I mean, what she's doing is no different than many homemakers do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
She just figured out how to market that.
Without question.
And then the other one is, who do you know who is, she's a billionaire, okay, who makes a living talking to people? Oprah, right.
Oprah.
So, okay, these are what we call everyday skills, where if you said to someone, do you think you could make money talking to people? No, no. So what they've done is create what we call self-limiting beliefs. Yeah. They've limited themselves in what their future could be. So my job is to challenge those and say, what would it take? What would it take for you to achieve that, if that's truly what you wanted?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's really about opening your mind up to possibilities.
And when I do this show and I hear so many, beautiful stories of so many different, people who have taken the chances on themselves, the same message resonates where they sit back and they say, I've never been happier, right? They've never actually been happier about what they're doing. And there's almost like this serenity kind of feeling they have about themselves, right? Like everything, if you've ever played sports and then finally, they say to the athlete, the game slowed down for them, so to speak. Right. And then they can see plays happen before they happen because they weren't just going play by play, but they mastered the playbook, so to speak. And so now they're like, yeah, they know when that wide receiver is going to be there. They can hit the ball long before the pitcher threw it. Right. They're walking away after the jump shot because they know they practiced it 1,000 times. So there's a certain calmness that these people have about themselves because they went through the tough times and they finally found their voice, so to speak.
Right. And for me, when I first started out in my own business, Rashad, I can look back, and there were months where I had one client for the whole month. Okay? And then it was a question of how committed am I to being successful with this?
Right.
Obviously, that commitment was there because I'm still doing what I do. Right. I still have certain goals, and it's very interesting. Lately, I'm connecting with people who I haven't approached them with, hey, can you help me reach these goals? In our conversation, it just flows, which is not about randomness. So yesterday I was on a call with someone and he said, fill out this form, 31 questions, and we'll see what it tells us about you. So he took that information, fed it into a program that he has, and he came up with, okay, if you're going to do workshops, here's the script for what that workshop is going to be. So with AI, it generates everything that you need. And here's your elevator pitch. Here's your press release. And it's all done for you. So there I was with that. And 2 weeks before, I was on a call with a woman where she was giving me the blueprint, but she wasn't giving me the construction materials. So I took what she gave me and fed it into this questionnaire. He gave me the construction materials.
Nice.
So there it is. If I think once you set your mind to achieving something, whatever you want to call it, the universe, randomness, whatever, it's going to deliver on what you need for that to happen. You just have to believe that that's what occurs in life.
You really do. And so, I looked at your, stellar coaching career. You've gone to universities, you've gone to nonprofits, you go to businesses, you pretty much, have dove yourself into multiple different industries. But I think your message resonates the same. You have to bring out the you for me to help you. Right. And it has to be authentic. It's something that can't be manufactured, so to speak, right? Because there's nothing that's going to, at some point, and I can speak, with conviction about this. The reason I think I've done okay on this podcast, I'll never say I do great, is because I'm passionate about wanting to know what people want to do. I'm passionate about process like you are. I'm passionate about curiosity and things like that. Because you're going to have to work on this when nobody's around. You're going to have to work on this when you're tired. When you've done 2 or 3 interviews a day, when you've had 2 or 3 clients and you're on you're burning the candle on both ends, that's when you're going to know whether or not you're passionate about something or not.
Well, when you just mentioned the fact that you thought that you were good but not great,
Yeah.
So you have to define what great would look like, Rashad.
Right. Absolutely.
And are you willing to put in what it takes to move from good to great?
Without question. Without
And
question.
that's up to you. I don't think anyone can decide for you
Right.
what that path needs to be.
Right.
When you'll know when you achieve it. I
Yep.
think for most of us, we are lifelong learners,
Right.
and we're always looking for ways to improve
Mm-hmm.
our skills, our experience, everything that goes along with that. Because at my age, I'm still learning, and
Absolutely.
and I'll be honest, I'm 77.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
You look great.
I'm not done learning yet. And so with this new plan, okay, the construction materials that I've received,
Yeah.
my job is to use those to build what
Right.
that next layer of my occupation will look like. Yeah.
I think what people have to understand is that it's okay to break the rules, right? So I think that there's an inflection point that's come across with a lot of people, particularly in the last 10 years, because there was this mentality that for a long time that permeated that if you didn't go to college or didn't get a degree, somehow that was you were deemed as less than or less worthy or not, dignified in society to do certain things. I think because of how, number one, how much cost college has been versus what people saw as the return on that investment, they started to think outside the box a little bit, right? And so now, you do have people in that second stage of life or, recent college or high school graduates that are like, I kind of saw what my grandparents and my parents and my uncles went through. And I don't know if I want to put myself through that kind of situation. It's a testament to human character and characteristics and achievement that you ultimately have to be at home in your own thoughts and you have to question, am I willing to go through the fire pit to get, what I'm passionate about to the world, right? And then number two is you have to make sure that you measure your own level of success unto itself. Even though you only had one client, you knew when you stuck enough with that one client, good things were going to happen to you.
Right. And it's believing in yourself.
Yes.
And also surrounding yourself with people who believe in you.
Without question.
You can do this. You can
question.
absolutely do this. You have what it takes. And
Yes.
so for me, I just kept my nose to the grindstone and I thought, okay, I'm going to keep building this. And most of my clients right now come to me through referrals.
Beautiful.
But this new construction plan has a whole new way of reaching out to ideal clients and
Right.
have them benefit from my services.
Right.
So again, anything's possible.
Right.
Do I want to be the Oprah Winfrey of career coaches?
Yeah.
I don't think that's on my radar to
Yeah.
do that. I want to be good at what I do and I want to help people, but I don't have to be everyone needs to be a Dr. David Petrovay. No, I'm like everyone else. I'm unique. What I offer is going to be different from other people, and that's a good thing. Just like with you, I've been on podcasts, over 40 of them so far.
Wonderful.
And I see commonalities among what I see as successful podcasters. And part of it is the ability to relate.
Yes.
And I've done a few where that didn't happen. This is not one of them. Thank goodness.
I appreciate that.
But I think that, again, if what you do as someone said this once, if what you do makes a difference in one life, you're a success.
Without question. And, I think people are yearning for that because oftentimes, there's very flashy images that present themselves on Instagram, social media, YouTube, and people get enticed by, all I have to do is sell t-shirts on this shopping platform. And then in 6 months, it'll all work itself out. Well, that what you have to understand is you may not be good for selling t-shirts. You may not be good for selling, that's if you're not passionate about that, you're going to not follow up. And then that's just an image that gets you enticed to click. It really boils down to sometimes it's funny. What you're good at can be staring you in the face. It could literally be staring you in the face. You could try to dive into this. You could try to dive into that. And then all of a sudden, one day, like kind of with this podcast, I was like, why don't just ask people what they do for a living and how they did it? Because I'm always fascinated. I'm always fascinated about it. Why don't I try to do that and see how it works itself out? And then all of a sudden you look up and, a some change later, you got 100,000 downloads on Spotify, 100,000 views on YouTube, and you're like, you know what? It was staring me in my face for years, and I just never thought about it. Never occurred to me to do it.
Right. And so you and I are very similar in where we come from, which is as a child, I always wondered what made people tick.
Yes.
And so here I am finding
Yes.
out what makes people tick, just like
Mm-hmm.
you do.
Mm-hmm.
And we just turned it into an occupation.
And then what you do is, if you come from a pure place with no agenda, you find people have good conversations to have with you, right? Because at the end of the day, people just want to be happy and feel fulfilled and feel listened to, right? And I think if you can accomplish those three things, I think that, it makes for a very good experience. And then ultimately you do get people who listen or who get coaching from you. And then they're like, okay, I feel comfortable with Dr. David. I feel comfortable talking to Rashad. That's not to say you're going to knock it out of the ballpark every single time, but you can leave knowing that, hey, maybe it just wasn't a good fit, but it wasn't because I did something to this person, so to speak.
There are going to be times, and I run into them, and I'm sure you do too, where you're listening to someone and what their needs are, and you ask yourself, oh, am I capable of addressing their needs?
Without question.
And that's a valid question to ask.
Without question.
And what I have found was every time I've been able, not necessarily to hit it out of the ballpark,
right.
but I've been able to answer and address those needs.
Yeah.
And I think that tells me I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
And I'm very clear in terms of who I best serve,
right,
and who I don't serve.
Exactly.
So I'm in the middle. I don't work with CEOs,
right,
because I've never had that experience.
Right.
And I don't work with people who are blue collar, not because I look down on them, but it's not where my experience is going to best serve them.
Right.
So I talk to, mid-level professionals, which is where I've been.
Right.
And so I can identify with pretty much anything they're going through because I've been there.
Right. You just try. It's the relatability, right? So like it's the relatability, and you don't want to. Hey, we start doing the consultation call, and then 15 minutes into it, you're like, this is not really going to be a good fit because there's something that you're seeking that I can't answer, and it's mutually beneficial for both of us for you to find somebody that can best assist in that endeavor, and that's just realistic, right? Like that's how life evolves and teaches itself. I'm always curious, and I always ask this of all of my guests, not because they need me, but because for the purpose of the show. Where can people find Dr. David Petrovay?
So I do have a website. It's davidpetrovaycoaching.com. Yeah. And it's the best way to get to know what I do. Mm-hmm. I also post a daily blog for people. Yes. And so that's about raising people's emotional levels, okay, giving them hope, giving them, inspiration and transformation.
Right.
So it talks about the books that I have published, and I'm in the process of publishing 2 more that I'm co-authoring with someone. Wonderful. And all of that information is there. They can also look at podcasts I've done. They can look at webinars that I've done. Mm-hmm. And so it gives them a taste for how I perform. Right. And it's a great resource for people, and you can book a session.
That's amazing, and it's wonderful. And I always believe that I've heard this quote many times. Vera Wang didn't start her luxury line until in her 40s. Colonel Sanders didn't start KFC till he was in his 50s. There are a multitude of stories of people who, once they got post 35, post 40, post 50, that found their voice and their passion and what they were really, truly wanted to pursue in life. So for people who are listening, who are in those respective age brackets, younger or older, it's still a stage in life, and it's all about your passion. And there's not an ending, so to speak. You're not too old, is what I'll say.
I think you're too old when, like you were saying, I'm not going to try out for a Major League Baseball team at this point in my life, okay?
Right.
They wouldn't have me. I wouldn't. If I hit a home run, I'd be lucky if I could get to first base.
Right.
I'd have someone run the bases for me. But
be realistic.
Be realistic. Know what your limitations are.
Absolutely.
And if they are ones that are self-imposed, you need to take a good hard look at those.
Yes.
But if they're ones where you say, the reality is this is not something that is on my radar right now, so I'm going to pivot, like you said,
Right.
and this is what I can do. It's really, Rashad, about knowing who you are. And I think when people get into their 40s and 50s, they have a much clearer picture of who that individual is.
Right. Because, 20s go by fast, and, the 20s go by really fast. And to your point, now you have those quiet moments where, whether you have children, whether you don't, and you're sitting back and saying, what did I leave on the table? What did I leave on the table? That person that was trying to mentor me or trying to give me good advice, did I blow them off? And now you start to sit back and say, what could I do to make sure that my voice is heard in whatever endeavor I choose to see fit? So for that being said, I really appreciate your time, Dr. David Petrovay. And, for you to get up on West Coast time and get a chance to talk to me, I'm very honored because I don't know if I could have made the time that you did.
Well, this definitely was worth it. Sharing my story hopefully will give people hope that they are not stuck in what they do. And by the way, that's what the next two books are about.
Right.
How to get out of being stuck.
Yeah.
So those will be launched in August. So your clients can look for those. And I do process in my books. So here are steps that you can take to move from where you were to where you want to be.
That's wonderful. And thank you very much for joining us on the Randomness of Nothing. Your life didn't happen randomly. It happened because of choice and decisions. So I want to thank you personally for your time on the show.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Rashad, and all the best to you.
You too, David. Dr. David.